Hey, this is Crystal. I am documenting my cancer journey, and this is my first video of what I've been going through since I discovered I had cancer. Um, and I'm documenting this for the benefit of anyone who needs to learn about thymic carcinoma, which is a rare form of cancer that I was recently diagnosed with. Um, so I'll start at the beginning, and you know, you can just kind of follow me over the next couple of weeks to see what this journey is going to be like. So all of this started on December 4th, 2022, which was a Sunday. I wasn't feeling good. My husband and I had just gotten back from Florida, and I had this really bad cough, and I thought that I was exposed to some allergen in the hotel room. The hotel room was kind of moldy and mildewy, and it was, after Thanksgiving, it was raining, and it's kind of dank, and it wasn't a great hotel room. So, I was like, oh crap, I'm having some sort of allergic reaction. And I just kind of figured it was bronchitis or a sinus infection or something like that. And, when I got home, I started home remedy, which was, echinacea, emergency, airborne, ginger tea with turmeric, honey, all the chicken soup, home remedies to build up my immune system, to help me get over what I thought was just, again, bronchitis and a sinus infection. And after about 2 weeks, I was still coughing, couldn't seem to get rid of the cough. So I said to my husband, I'm like, something's not right. I think I need to go to urgent care. And so we went to urgent care on a Sunday afternoon. And when I went to urgent care, the PA that I saw, she was really, really, really nice. I feel like I owe my life to her because she was not only nice, but she was attentive. And she said, let's just do a chest x-ray to be sure. I also had acid reflux, so sometimes bronchitis symptoms seem a lot like acid reflux symptoms. So she's like, let's just be sure. Let's just do a chest x-ray. So I had a chest x-ray done Sunday afternoon, and they treated me for acid reflux and for bronchitis before I left. So before I left urgent care, I was feeling a lot better. I wasn't I didn't have as much shortness of breath. The coughing had stopped. My acid reflux is actually silent reflux, and if any of you suffer from that, one of the symptoms is it's like a gas that comes back up, and it causes you to have shortness of breath and coughing and stuff. So before I left urgent care, I was feeling a lot better, and the PA said, well, if anything shows up on your x-ray, we'll call you, but it seems like you're better, so go home and take these meds and get better. And I got I think a Z-Pack, a steroid prednisone pack to, just deal with the inflammation from the bronchitis. Well, lo and behold, later on that evening, the PA called and said that a technician reviewed my x-ray and saw a mediastinal mass, a mass of the anterior mediastinum. And she said, it could be nothing, but we really recommend that you follow up with your primary care. and follow up with a CAT scan. So, I was like, whoa, that's pretty major. I've never had anything like that before, and I've had bronchitis before, and I've had chest x-rays before, but never have I ever heard of anything called mediastinal mass. And so I immediately started researching different types of mediastinal masses, and learned that there are 4 types of um, mediastinum masses, and the most common of the 4 types of mediastinal masses is a thymoma. Um, my mass was in the anterior mediastinum, and the most common of the anterior mediastinum masses is a thymoma, which is a tumor that grows on your thymus gland. And I learned that, sometimes thymomas come in and they're not malignant, meaning they're benign. Sometimes they're benign, and sometimes they're malignant and they become benign. But even so, at that time, I was just doing research, and all of this was really premature, right? Because I didn't know what was what. I was like, oh, what's a mediastinum mass? What's a thymoma? And in my mind, I just wasn't thinking that I had cancer. I was thinking, oh, worst case scenario, it could be inflammation, it could be a fatty tumor, it could be anything, right? It never crossed my mind that I had a cancerous tumor sitting in my chest. And so the next day, I'm not going to say I didn't take it seriously, but I just had to process it all. So I didn't call my primary care right away. I eventually emailed my primary care and just said to her, hey, look, this is what was found in urgent care. She's in the same hospital network, so I asked her to pull it up on her system and to let me know whether or not I needed a visit with her. And so I ended up doing a virtual visit with her. And even though I did a virtual visit with her, she had already expedited a request for me to get a CAT scan. And because of the location of the mass, she expedited a consult with a cardiothoracic surgeon. And, she's like, look, it could be nothing, but we don't want to wait. We don't want to waste time. So on December 9th, I had my consult with her. And then on December 14th, I had my first CT scan. And the CT scan did show that there was a mass in my mediastinum. And at the time, the mass measured approximately 5.5 centimeters by 6.5 centimeters, which is about 2 inches by 3 inches, somewhere in that range. Which, is a pretty sizable mass sitting in your chest. And it also indicated that it was above my heart and above my lung. So, and it's in my left mediastinum. So it's basically in this area. So once the CT scan showed that it was indeed a mass, my primary care expedited a request for me to get a PET scan. And, if you've never had a CAT scan, if you've never had a PET scan, one of the first things you need to understand is the difference between a CAT scan, an X-ray, and a PET scan. An X-ray is just going to show an anomaly, something that's there that shouldn't be there. A CAT scan is going to give that anomaly definition, and basically it takes sliced images of the anomaly sitting in your chest. A PET scan is like a CAT scan. It can be given with a contrast dye. And what I learned is when you get a PET scan, one of the first things they ask you is if you're a diabetic, because they need to understand how your body metabolizes sugar. And I was like, no, I'm not diabetic. And they're like, okay. And what they do is they ask you to fast for a few hours before you get the PET scan. Because when you get the PET scan with a contrast dye, basically they're injecting you with a sugar dye. And what I learned over time was that cancer cells have receptors that are attracted to sugar. And so when you get a PET scan, the sugar is going to be attracted to the location of the tumor and of the cancer. And so as you have this IV of sugar going through your body, the sugar is racing to the source of the cancer. And the PET scan shows you on, in a digital image format, whether or not you have cancer in one location or in multiple locations in your body. So in my case, all of the activity was in a central location, which means in my case, the cancer was contained to a single area. Now, that doesn't mean at that time it didn't rule out the possibility of other forms of cancer. It just meant that the thymoma and the cancer cells were contained in that one area. It did not rule out like the possibility of a blood cancer like leukemia or lymphoma or something like that. So I still had to go through more tests, but the main thing was they were able to determine that the PET scan showed consistency with malignancy, which meant that all of the sugar dye was drawn to the receptors in the tumor, and that shows consistency with malignancy. So if you have a malignant tumor in your body and you get a PET scan and it has that sugar dye, all the sugar is going to rush to all of the points in your body where the cancer cells are attracted to the sugar. And in my case, it was only in one spot. So that turned out to be a good thing for me. So all of this happened. So I got my PET scan on December 27th. So from December 4th, I got my x-ray. December 14th, I got a CAT scan. December 27th, 2 days after Christmas, I got a PET scan. And then on December 28th, I had another consult with my doctor, and she suggested a biopsy. And by this time, I'm doing research on my own, and I am, all over Google, all over WebMD and Cleveland Clinic and Mayo Clinic and Sloan Kettering and all of these cancer websites all over the internet. And by this time, I'm convinced that it's a thymoma. And in my mind, I'm still thinking it's not cancerous, because in my mind, even though the PET scan shows malignancy tendencies, in my mind, I'm still thinking, surely I don't have cancer. It just can't be right. So anyhow, so I'm thinking, let's just skip the whole damn biopsy and let's just go straight to surgery. Because whenever you have a thymoma, whether it's cancerous or not, the recourse for getting rid of a thymoma is usually a thymomectomy or thymectomy, which is the removal of the thymus gland. I learned also that the thymus gland loses all-purpose after your pubescent years. So your thymus is used to build up your white blood cells and your immune system. And then when you hit puberty, usually your thymus dissolves, like it shrinks down and then it dissolves. But in a few cases with some people, the thymus will actually remain and could become cancerous. So that's what ended up happening with mine, I think. I don't know. But in either case, I didn't want a biopsy, right? Like, I didn't want any more tests. I didn't want any more scans. I didn't want any more blood work. I just wanted this thing out of me, right? So, my doctor set up a consult with a cardiothoracic surgeon, and the consult was originally set up in December, but because I hadn't had my PET scan yet, the thoracic surgeon was like, no, let's wait until we get the results of your PET scan, and then we'll figure out next steps. So I did my PET scan on the 27th, and I had a consult with a cardiothoracic surgeon who is a surgeon who specializes in tumors and diseases of the chest cavity. So basically, these doctors focus on lung cancer, esophagus cancer, thyroid cancer, thymus cancer. They do open heart surgery. They specialize in this cavity here. And, just the thought of me having to consult with a cardiothoracic surgeon was freaking scary, So, when I met with the thoracic surgeon, basically he said he suspected it was a thymoma. So I was on board with him, at least. But he said that the tumor, the thymoma, was too big to be removed, the size that it was. And he basically said that the thymoma was running near or down my left phrenic nerve, which is a nerve that runs down your shoulder to your diaphragm. And he said, if they tried to remove the tumor the way it is, and they hit that nerve, it could not be good, right? And at the time, I didn't really understand what he meant when he said it could not be good. I was just really so focused on the fact that there's this tumor sitting in my chest. I didn't think about the nerve or anything else. So he referred me to the Cancer Institute for the healthcare system that I'm in. And I have to say, I really like the healthcare system that I'm in. I feel like all the doctors were very attentive. They were quick. But the fact that he referred me to a cancer institute just unnerved me, right? Like, all of a sudden, this is becoming real, right? So I go from having this mediastinal mass, which to me is an anomaly, to learning that the mass has malignant tendencies, to learning that the mass is too big to be removed surgically, to being referred to a cancer center. So, all of a sudden my worst nightmares, my worst fears are starting to become true. And I saw the cardiothoracic surgeon on a Friday, and I was in the Cancer Institute on Monday. This is how quickly they moved. And I met with an oncologist and his staff. And even though we had not confirmed that it was cancer, the cardiothoracic surgeon did recommend a biopsy. He said, look, regardless of whether it's cancerous or not, you need a biopsy. We need to know what we're dealing with. And once we get the biopsy, we'll know how to treat you. So he ordered a biopsy, a CT guided biopsy, and he ordered me to have a consult with an oncologist. So when I met with the oncologist is basically saying, well, we suspect it's a thymoma, but we don't know. We've got to rule out other forms of cancer. Because the PET scans show consistency with malignancy, they felt pretty confident that it was cancerous. And because of where it's located, they felt pretty confident that it was a thymoma. What they didn't know was whether or not there was any other form of cancer in my body. And what I learned is with a thymoma or thymic carcinoma, there really are no telltale ways to tell if it's cancer outside of a biopsy. So like for some cancers, you can test for tumor markers, right? So like if you have breast cancer or lung cancer or pancreatic cancer or prostate cancer, doctors can run blood tests and they could test for certain tumor markers, and they can tell based on these tumor markers what type of cancer you have. But when you have a thymoma, thymomas are so rare, they're so exceptional. It's hard to just do a blood test. So what they often do is they rule out other forms of cancer in addition to getting a biopsy. So I had to get a biopsy in addition to a ton of blood tests to rule out other forms of cancer. And so on January 17th, I saw an oncologist. And by January 27th, I was in integrative radiology care getting a CT guided biopsy. And if you've never had a CT guided biopsy, it's a weird experience. Basically, you're getting a CT scan at the same time you're getting a biopsy. And what they do is they put a grid over your chest. So let's just say this is the grid, right? So they put a grid over your chest and there's like grid lines. And then they stick a needle where they think would be the best spot to pull some of the biopsy material out. And then they slide you into a CT, a CAT scan, to see if they're over the mass. And then they pull you out and they adjust the grid. And they keep doing that and then they start marking your body with where they're going to go in to pull some of the mass out. And you're not asleep. You're numb and you're lucid, but you're not asleep. So what they do is once they've marked the safest location to put the needle in and to pull some of the mass out, you can actually feel the needle going in and coming out. And I remember they must have pulled out like 6 samples when they did the biopsy. And, once they did the biopsy, there were no more tests to run. I just needed to wait because at that point I'd had CAT scan, PET scan, I'd had blood tests, I'd had tests for leukemia, tests for lymphoma, tests for lung cancer. I'd had all these different tests. And at this point, the only test that I was waiting for was confirmation of whether or not it was cancerous. And by that point, I'd already accepted the fact that I had a cancerous tumor sitting in my chest. and I just needed to know what my treatment plan was going to be. So that's part one. That takes me from December 4th all the way through January 27th. It was a total of a little over 2 months, 8 weeks. It was scary, and, you know, I just needed to figure out, like, what do we do next? There is one thing I do want to mention. Once I learned that I had a tumor and it could be cancerous, I immediately started research on holistic and natural remedies. And there are a couple of things that I did to help my body fight this, or at least I believe I'm helping my body fight this. So the first thing I learned about was soursop or graviola, guanabana. It's I buy the pulp. So if you're familiar with guanabana or soursop or graviola, it's a tropical fruit that is grown in Central America. You can buy it here in the States. I buy mine from the farmer's market, and I buy the pulp, and I mix it in a smoothie. And what I do is I make smoothie bags, and in my antioxidant smoothie bags, I have pineapple, I have raspberry, I have blueberry, I have banana, and then I cut 100 grams or about a quarter of the package of the graviola, and I mix all of this in a blender along with a little bit of coconut water. Now, some people might not agree with this plan, but that's my remedy. And I also mix in sumac root. I don't know if anyone is interested, but it works for me. Sumac root is also a Central American herb. A lot of people refer to it as Brazilian ginseng. It's not related to ginseng like the Asian ginseng or the American ginseng, but it's called sumac root, and it's an adaptogen, and I'm just going to leave that out there so you can do your own research. So I mix my sumac root with my blueberry, raspberry, pineapple, banana, and my soursop, and my coconut water. I mixed that all together, and I was doing the smoothies once a day. Now, some people may not agree because it's sweet, but I believe in the power of natural healing, and blueberries and raspberries are high antioxidants. Soursop is known to be a cancer killer. Sumac root is known to be an effective adaptogen, and banana is full of folate, and pineapple just tastes good. It's also good for digestion. And then, of course, the coconut water is high in potassium, vitamin C, and magnesium. And those are going to be very important when you start chemo. So I didn't want to wait until I got the word that I was going to have to start chemo to start building up my body. So I started building up my body in advance. I also started researching to see what chemo does to the body. So I also bought soursop tea because I like tea. And I make my own ginger turmeric tea. So I cut up fresh ginger and I cut up fresh turmeric, and excuse me, I stick a soursop tea bag in with my ginger tea and my turmeric tea, and I use Manuka honey. Um, and the reason I buy Manuka honey is because, and I have two different kinds. So this Manuka honey is not medical grade. I use it in my regular tea. And then I have a medical grade Manuka honey, which is a lot stronger. And I use this once a day. And the reason I use this Manuka honey once a day is because it will help your body fight off ulcers. If you do your research, you'll learn that one of the side effects of chemotherapy is ulcers, not only in your stomach, but in your mouth and on your body. And Manuka honey is known to be able to cure sores. Some people actually put the honey directly on their sores, but what I do is I ingest the honey so that it coats my throat and my stomach so that I don't develop ulcers. Um, and I started doing my regimen probably the week of my CAT scan, so probably the week of December 4th. So I've been on it for about 7 weeks now, and when I start my chemotherapy, and I know it's coming, I know that I will have done all that I can do to help fight this. So anyhow, that's part one of my story. It was long, so I'm sorry if it was long and boring, but this is my journey. This is Crystal is greater than cancer, and I am greater than chemotherapy. So if you have any questions, you're welcome to reach out to me. I'll put links in the YouTube for all of the products that I bought if you're interested. But again, if you have any questions, just reach out to me. I hope this is helpful to whoever, right? You can see I still have my hair, thank God. I don't know what the next few weeks are going to be like, but I'm just thanking God that we caught it early. And, once I get the results of my biopsy, I'll let you know. Okay? Peace.